There we go. Okay, so now we can get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining for our inaugural Featured Artist of the Month Zoom talk with our dear founder of the Leo Marchutz School of Painting and Drawing, Samuel Bjorklund. My name is Rose Guth and I'm the Executive Director of the Leo Marchutz School. And I'm really honored to be here today to introduce the founder of the school from 50 years ago. So I'm going to do, how this is going to look is I'm just going to do a really quick intro overview of Sam, and then I'm going to turn it over to him to give his talk, and then at the end we'll do some questions. So if you have any burning questions for Sam, you can make sure to ask those at the end. Sound good? Okay, so just to start us off, all of you probably know about Sam, but just to put us all on an even playing field, I'll do a little intro. So as I said, Sam is the co-founder of the Leo Marchutz School of Painting and Drawing. In 1972, Sam, along with Billy Wayman and Leo Marchutz, founded this school. And now 50 years later, he is a valued member of our board and continues to be a working artist in his home state of Florida. And I'm just going to read a little piece of something that Alan Roberts wrote as we were putting together our website. He wrote that Sam Bjorklund understood the humble yet acute and profound work and thoughts of Leo Marchutz. He worked tirelessly along with William Wayman, Francois de Assis, and Amos Booth, each in their own way, to create a form, a school, a place to guide and inspire artists and art students. In the early days of the Leo Marchutz School, Bjorklund put his faith in his vision, his painting, and his process. His study at Oskar Kokoschka's School of Vision in 1960, where he won first prize at the end of the session, would inform his process for years to come. Each year, Bjorklund would travel to see Kokoschka with his work in tow for a conversation and critique. Bjorklund's effect on students, his drive to get students to see, to be in the moment, is mythic in our history as a school. So now with that intro, and my apologies for the background noise, I am going to turn it over to Sam to go ahead and talk to all of you. Sam?
Well, hello, and first of all, indulge me, this is not an habitual activity of mine, so I'm a little bit nervous, a little bit of what you call stage fright. This is a little intimidating, but I will do the best I can do. I hope I can keep the beginning really brief, and maybe we can just focus it on conversations, because I see a lot of people I don't know, but I see people out of the last most of my life. Some of whom I've not seen in a lot of years. So I guess I wrote a little piece. Most of you have read that. My life really, as an adult and as a professional, began when I got to X in 1959 and I met Leo. There's not much to say leading up to that. I was 21 years old, and I'd always loved art, gone to museums and done a little bit of dabbling myself, but had never ever thought about it in a serious way. And I just, junior year abroad at the American Institute, and I joined Leo's class the second semester. And just in the short course of that semester, and our relationship as it developed just in that short period of time, I realized that I wanted to study with this man. At the same time, I had been encouraged to go to the Kokoschka School by another friend that had just come back from it. And he stayed for another year to study with Leo too, because there have been a lot of people, and this was one thing I did think about. I don't have a prepared little blah, because I just couldn't do it. But anyway, already, even before myself and George Hornbein at the time, and then real soon Billy came and got involved in this. In a sense, the world in itself was already flocking to Leo for questions of art, for his wisdom in art. In particular, obviously, Cezanne, but the whole of the Impressionists and just a lot of great people. I'm thinking Raywald and Venturi and people that we've all read were attracted to Leo. So from there, I went to the well, no, I finished the class and then I stayed another year. I told my parents I was going to do some, I didn't tell them what I was going to do. If they'd known I was going to stay there and study painting, there would have probably been some problem. I gave some cock and bull story about I was doing something on Dostoevsky or I was going to learn French or some nonsense like that. And I just stayed and studied and painted with Leo. And things just kept coming together. And this fellow, George Hornbein, had stayed on too. He had been to Kakashka and he'd come back. So we worked for the year with Leo, just painting in the next valley over. Some of you may know it's called Vallon de Garde. We would paint it, and periodically we would bring our paintings to Leo. And one important thing I remember, of course, we both offered, we said, Leo, we want to, spend this year studying with you. And how can we pay you? What will it cost us to be your students for this year? He says, I don't take money for this. This is just something I do. You bring your paintings whenever you want, and I'll help you. I'll look at them. And he said, just bring your paintings whenever, and your drawings whenever you want. So we spent the whole year like that. And that brings me, I think, to an important point in terms of Leo and in terms of Billy for certain. And I believe it in terms of myself. And that is that the desire to teach. Leo wasn't teaching how to paint. He never said, this is the way you mix your colors, this way you throw it up. He wasn't interested in that. He wanted you just to understand deeper inside, as we've seen used those of us that are familiar with the Marchutz literature and the Marchutz theme. It's just passing on the invisible in nature and trying to get underneath nature, trying to get inside nature, trying to get underneath yourself, inside the motif, inside the moment, inside the situation, inside some sort of a universal place that I would assume we call spirituality. And here I'm beginning to sound like I'm lecturing. I've got to stop myself in this real quick, but there's just in the spiritual realm, there is a very important principle, and that is you must pass it on, that you can't keep it without passing it on. Whatever you get in the realm of the arts or spirituality or anything can only stay and grow in you if you pass it on to other people. Otherwise, they say, and this is not me inventing this. This is, I believe it goes back to the Asian spiritual principles, and I think it's a Russian by the name of Guryadev or Ouspensky, an Englishman by the name of Ouspensky, who spent years traveling to the East, and that was the bottom line of what they came back with. Spirituality has to be passed on, and that's ultimately what we're passing on, I think, at the Leo School. And the way we assess that is through our eyes, because we're visual artists. So we say, and then I went off after the end of the second year. I went off to Kakashka's. That went well. I must say, getting the City of Salzburg Prize there simply served to help me with my doubts about whether, as passionately as I wanted to pursue this, it confirmed to me that at least two other people that I had tremendous respect for, being Kakashka and Leo, thought what I did was worthwhile pursuing. And so at that young age, I didn't have enough confidence in myself, but that helped a heck of a lot. So I went back to the US and finished my 2 degrees and came back immediately, well, as soon as I could anyway, to X to continue working with Leo. And a year later, Billy came back, very much the same situation. He'd gone back, finished college, and now he was back to work with Leo. So at that time, Billy and Leo were teaching at the beginning, were teaching at the American Institute. And at a certain point, I started teaching lithography there. And as we all know, there were always, it was never an easy situation, the relationship with the Institute. It was a lot simpler 50 years ago than it is right now. Anyway, so we had our ups and downs, but we owe to them the fact that we are together here, this meeting, all of us, by the fact that by some fluke of fate, they happened to choose Leo Marchutz to teach their class there, and we happened to go over there, and it brought us together. So we're always grateful to the Institute of American Universities for that. It doesn't mean we're always at peace with them, and of course now we know it's the moment of some things that certainly, hopefully, are going to be worked out one way or the other. But we worked on like that, and eventually the relationship became too strained. So we broke away in 1972 and tentatively started our first session. There is a very good history of the founding of the school. It was written, Billy and I collaborated on it, but it was written by Billy. And it was written some 25 years after the school was started, purely and simply because there was an introduction to the school at a tribute exposition that the Musée Granet and X put on for the school. And the introduction to the school that was written seemed factually a little bit uncertain, and we just wanted to correct that because it meant so much to us. So we got together and put together this history of the school, and I have a copy of it here. Alan, I know, has copies of it, but I think I've got several copies of it around here. But I suspect if anybody is interested enough in reading that, they could probably email either me or Alan and get that sent out, because it makes great reading. So that takes us to where we get the school independent. We all know, or not we all, but a lot of you know the lovely photos of our great mode of transportation, the Black Mariah, the old police van. I must say, somebody corrected me recently and said that wasn't our first mode of transportation. Actually, we had friends there, Ted and Bambi Morton, who lent us their Volkswagen van. So between our private cars and the Volkswagen van, those were our methods of transportation the first few years. So, and anyway, the school evolved and whatever. I'm not here to give a history of the school. That's, as I say, that's out there. But for me personally, my work in the school was gratifying because I was brought in contact with wonderful people. Ultimately, my work with the school and my belief in the school is major. That and my work as a painter are essentially all I can claim to have done in the world. Spawned a few kids, caught a few fish, but otherwise haven't done much. So, but just to finish, to kind of talk just a little bit about my work, I'd done a lot of stuff on my own, just as kids do. I drew a lot. I wanted to be an architect. I drew figures, but I never had anybody. I was just doing this for myself as a little kid, back as early as 5 years old. And then I got to college and realized I had to get serious about something. So anyway, I went into literature, but I had no idea of becoming a painter. But things just started happening, and I would go up on the weekend to work, and Leo would see these things, and the most unassuming things. I thought I'd done something pretty nice, but it was usually the most unassuming thing that I had done. He would notice that and say, oh, wow, that's nice. And of course, you wouldn't always go into it. So you had to figure out, why is that nice and why is that not nice? And, essentially, you had to find your own way as a painter. And as Leo put it, I can only teach you what not to do. In other words, the pitfall. You got to find your way. And I think that is the beautiful part of the whole thing, in the sense that my sense of the school is, it's not out to teach painting. It's out to teach vision. It started as a school of vision, a seminar in vision. And now for me, after 63 years of painting, I've come really full circle. And these last 2.5, almost 3 years of being kind of what we're locked up, what do we call it? I can't remember, the quarantine or something like that. And given my age and what have you, I've had to stay pretty much at home and been very happy to do it because I got a lovely studio and a lot of work to do. But it has become very clear to me. I worked for probably 40 years in X, painting landscapes, fighting the Mistral. I've got several snowscapes done out by Poulier that were done in the snow. We painted in the rain. We paint Venice. I've fallen in the canal. Billy's led students into the canal. We have all sorts of wonderful stories about that. They're not in the history of the school, but believe me, they're known to some of us. But I worked just steadfast in nature. And I don't know if I really understood what sight and insight, what vision really meant. But I just knew that Kokoschka and Leo both underlying their message was something that I had to learn. I had to develop my visual perception in such a way that the rest would take care of itself. And all I can say is it was confusing in the beginning. I just stood out in front of nature. I saw green. I tried to get a little bit of this green, a little bit of that green. And I worked for a lot of years like that and did a lot of what you just call conventional landscapes. In the end of mid 90s, I think, the early 90s, I was up on Chemin de, whatever it is, above Cezanne Studio. There's a great view of Chemin de l'Eau, it may be called, motif out on the Saint Victoire. And I worked there. We all work, those of us in the school, most of us or a lot of us work kind of with themes, not for any reason because it sounds good, but because you learn from going back to the same motif, going back to the same motif. And at the end of every painting, you're always thinking, wow, I could have done maybe just a little bit different here. Or I could have maybe just used it a little bit different harmony, a little bit. And so that gives you an idea. Hey, well, why don't I just do another painting? Now I've done one version of it. Why not just do another one? You get that, and you work your way through those. I mean, we all know Francois has been for 50 years painting the same 4 or 5 motifs. But that helped me tremendously, was going back to the same motif and going back and learning more and more and more about it. And I think in the end, ultimately, you begin to see more deeply into nature and see a little bit behind nature, and plus into yourself at the same time, because you're wondering, what am I as an artist? Where do my paintings land me out there, and all sorts of these considerations. But having come full circle, and in the 90s, when I was up in that hill at Saint Victoire, suddenly I've been doing it for 45 years. I've been fighting with the Mistral would come up, it would start raining, the light would change. We all know the joys and what a pain in the ass it can be to paint in nature. I said, I'm through. I'm not going out in front of nature anymore. I'm going to figure this out in the studio. And I went back and as I have done throughout my whole career, I have somehow fallen into just, couldn't say how I got into doing watercolors, except for maybe that's all we did at the Kokoschka school. but I see a pattern looking backwards of sometimes a couple, 2-3 years of just a sense of watercolors. And then I learned things from that I bring over to the oils. And then I get to the end of it. Seems to me I get to the end of, I drain the well of what's in me for that. And then I go back to the watercolors and get kind of churned up again. The watercolors are all done directly from nature. The rest of the work, when I swore off the landscape painting like that, and I came back to my house one day and I had the whole backyard was full of fruit trees. And I had these beautiful trees back there that get all this beautiful fruit on it. And one day I went out and I looked at this plum tree and I see a lady there, I don't know who it is. It's got a painting of one of the trees behind, but it's not the plum tree. But anyway, I said, let me paint it. So I dragged my old easel out and canvas out and all my paints out and my palette out and my hat on and gloves and everything like this. I said, what the hell am I doing out here? I've sworn off painting painting outdoors. So I did a drawing, a large drawing of what was essential to me, including all sorts of notes, colors. Some of the paintings still I've copied the color notes. What harmony for this, what color for that, what tonalities. And then I came in and I just worked from my painting as strictly as I could, which was already a certain degree of abstraction away from what I realized at that point was what I had been doing in front of nature. I wasn't being selective. I was taking in too much. And that part of the vision is being selective. I can't even way over my head where I'm going with this. I hadn't planned all of this. But anyway, I went on like that and did for a whole lot of years those paintings of trees that were done from drawings in the house. And they are probably more, I don't have images here to put up. I'm not technically capable of doing that sort of thing. But I hadn't worked out in nature as such, other than these little still lifes, which were in the later years, mostly just flowers. I call those improvisations. All my work is improvisation. I never know what I'm going to do. I put the first stroke on, and that tells me what the next stroke is, and the next stroke dictates what and where the third stroke goes. I really don't try not to have too much of an idea of what I'm going, because I love the spontaneity and I love improvisation. So then when lockdown happened, and I didn't have any more of these drawings or any more, and here in Florida, it's just, there are no motifs. I mean, you may say I don't have eyes to see it, but there are people, yes, but there are no motifs in terms of nature. It's just cement strip malls and swamps, as far as I can tell. I haven't figured the place out. Plus the climate here, you can't do anything out there. It's a terrible place to live. Don't follow me. But I just happened to notice out my window that the community of a lot of houses. I've never done that before. I was always out in the country. But all these houses back, but between my house and the house next door, there's 4 lovely fruit trees, 5 or 6 actually. There's 2 soursop trees, there's 2 avocado trees, and a number of other trees. And suddenly I began to see possibilities in this. And I know that the possibilities that I saw in it grew out of the work that I did with the watercolors, which were just these little improvised studies. At most, one might have taken it, towards the end, might have taken half hour, maybe an hour at the most. Earlier in my watercolor days, I did a lot of portraits, and it might be a couple hours out. But I realized it, as this sort of, what do we call it, the pandemic or the isolation or whatever we're living in. I can't remember why we stayed home, but whatever that thing is, where I just was kind of taking stock, and I realized I'd done a whole new series of these paintings out the window from this tree as it changes seasons and it changes leaves and everything like that. And it was a thrill. And it was a thrill because I suddenly realized that for me, the idea of vision, when I went off to Prakashika School of Vision, I had no idea really what that was. Leo never talked about vision. I mean, vision, he talked about nothing. It was there, but he never called it such. Then we decided to call it school, a seminar on vision. But I realize now that the whole basis of what I got back to when I went back in front of nature in those latest tree things that have all the leaves, and I see one behind the lady there. I don't recognize the lady. I hope it's not somebody I know out of 50 years ago that I don't recognize anymore, or I hope it's not something that I do see one of those things up there behind somebody. Anyway, I was just overwhelmed with how much it's come full circle, that the assurance, and I never expected, it was such a struggle for the first 60 years, but I never thought it would begin to just pour out and flow. But it came full circle, and that's what it's done in these years here in front of nature. And in the last 3 years, I've had more time to concentrate on it because I'm not called upon to do anything. They won't let me out of the house, which is fine by me. And it brings me full circle to the whole idea of getting this school started, because I really am convinced that the principles behind this, of, in other words, vision, are the soundest principles you can have for getting on for a career in painting. Now, there may be other things that I probably wanted to say, but I hadn't thought this out. I hadn't written it. I hadn't planned it out. So there's a little blurb. I would much rather this just be a chat between old friends, or even people, if they're not old friends, new friends. And so let's turn it over to you guys and see what do you want to talk about. Is that a good format, Ruth? Is that all right for you?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you so much for that. So why don't we do this for just to make it kind of easy to get one person to talk at a time. I now have my screen so I can see everybody. So if you want to ask a question, why don't you put your hand up like this and I'll call on you. And then we can have Sam answer. Does that work for all? So don't be shy about asking a question. And you'll have to, if you don't have your video on, you'll have to turn your video on so I can see you.
Oh, and if whoever asks the question, I would appreciate it if you just introduce yourself, because I don't see the names underneath the pictures of people. So, it would just be of interest to me to know who's, asking questions. So.
Okay, Jill, why don't you go ahead and make sure to unmute
Jill O'Brien,
yourself.
that's what I thought that was.
Yeah.
Jill O'Brien.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Jill. Long time no see.
It's been like, what, 40 something years or so.
I see you.
Can you show us something that you're working on now? Can you show us a painting that I see a whole bunch stacked behind you. If you don't want
to. Those are the next paintings to come. Those are empty canvases behind me.
I'd love to see.
I mean, I thought about that, and I could show you lovely paintings of Leo's, of mine, of Billy's, of Francois's, all over the house, but I'd have to probably be on my phone, and I don't know. I don't think this is I'm on a monitor and a computer, and I don't know how to. I can turn. There's a thing that goes back to a series that from a. Oh, you can see at the far end.
I can see the one on the easel.
That's the latest. It's part of a commission, and it's just one that I'm not sure where to go with. But that's about all I can do in this forum, unless somebody else can. I mean, I could show all sorts of things if I I mean, I'm not technical enough to be able to show you pictures from my, you know, what do you call it? I pictures, photos. I couldn't bring that off. And the only other thing I could do is walk around the house with it, but I'm not zoomed in on the phone.
Right.
I don't know if that would even be possible. I wish I could show you more.
We have several
Behind
images.
the lady next to you, Jill, is another one of the recent paintings.
What next to, yeah, this is a Chris Coffey painting
lovely.
behind me.
We have several images of Sam's
No,
work
there's one
on
lady
our
that's not
website
in the
too.
front of a Chris Coffey painting. I don't, I'm
Can you
sure.
put one up, Rose? Can you share your screen with
Yeah,
one
let
of-
me see if I can share my screen and show some of the images that we have up on the site. I'm going to mute myself because there's a lot of background noise here, but I'll bring that up just one.
Or Sam, you can bring that big painting out that's back there in the corner and let us see what you're working on.
Yeah, it would be great to see that.
Wow, I would rather show you a finished version in the front room.
Okay.
Here we
But I
go.
don't know how to do that because I don't know how to get this computer into the front.
Right.
And that's one of the earliest of the watercolors.
Okay, there we go, Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the floral improvisations. Well, obviously it's written down below. That's what I'm up to now
Yeah.
these days. Different scale too.
And
That's,
Sam,
yeah.
I was going to say in our conversations prior to this talk, I was really struck by the idea that you had begun your sort of painting career with Leo and Billy and Oscar Kokoschka, working directly from nature. And then, as you said, you sort of, with all the different challenges of working outside and working, you know, on the motif, you decided to sort of turn your back on that and go into the studio and work directly in the studio. And then it was only during this COVID time, this, you know, quarantine time, that you actually got back to nature. And I just thought that idea was so beautiful, that during this time of everyone sort of, you know, shutting themselves up and being a little bit isolated, that was what you needed to be able to return to nature. I thought that was such a beautiful, beautiful idea during this sort of confined time in the world.
Well, it was a lucky coincidence too, that I just happened to I happened to look out, you know, if I looked out and just saw my neighbor's wall with his storm window, his storm shutters up or something, I might not have had such good luck, but the trees were just exquisite and a real challenge because they're big trees and a lot of them. But this is a painting that was done back in the beginning, the end of the 90s, early 20s, that actually my daughter has. That's version 1, but a lot of people keep seeing it there and want to know. And so that's what this thing at the far end of the studio is, a commission to do one. You know, I change it up a little bit and what have you, but they just want another thing kind of like that. So that's what I've been into recently, because the trees are not performing. They're in their summer green, where there's just green on green on green, and believe me, it's just one tone of green. I get a little bit more pleasure when I can see varieties, as you can see from this painting, when there's some variations and you can work. So that early portraits was 1970, yeah.
Yeah, and this is just a selection of ones that you've sent us that we put on the site. So it sort of spans your many different decades of your career. Really lovely to see.
Yeah, and this was, well, that last one of the little bush, that's not even a tree, that's just a little, oh. Now there's one of the very, very first wren clogs. Yeah, that would have been one of the very first ones.
Sam, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
I see that there's a lot of white surface on your paintings.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I have 2 questions.
I can hear somebody giggling back there, but it's funny because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I started, can you flip back, Rose, to that last Renfro tree? Yeah. When I was doing those, Chris wrote me and he said, Sam, what, because there's this whole Cezanne thing that will white of the canvas. What does the white of the canvas do? And I have to admit, I was stymied. I don't know what the hell the white of the canvas does. It's just what I painted on. And actually began to make me think, well, maybe I'm not on the right track. I began to question. But I went on and I did 4 or 5 years of these. And I liked them more and more. And I think in the end, my feeling is the white, it's just the same white that's in Leo's canvases or Francois' canvases. It's just the white. It's there. Who said you have, or the white that's, it's not white, but the ochre that's on the walls of the caves. There's not a lot of difference. That's just my rationalization. That may be a pure rationalization. That's just the way I understand it. I don't know. I painted what I saw. There, what I did is I just put down exactly what I saw in the drawing. And I must say that if you look at, oh, you can't see what I'm pointing at, I don't think. My hand goes up, no. But up in the top, towards the middle, you've got a gray area, vertical sort of a gray area. And you've got various sort of gray areas around those shapes that are obviously, even those leaves are not really pretending to be leaves. This was one part I wanted to touch in the whole thing. And I've always felt and insisted and understood. Leo gave us a sheet of an extract of a letter from, it's either from the German poet Schiller to Goethe or from Goethe to Schiller, about staying on the tightrope in between going on the one side too close to nature, to the appearance to this, and you fall into the no-no of realism, or going on the other side, going completely and going too far into the abstraction that it just becomes fantasy and without significance. So I have always tried, and I think you'll see it in artists, you're always kind of trying to push away from the realist side out to the edges of the abstraction, which is where the artistic apparatus must come in, because there's a certain synthesis or abstraction from what you see when you've seen it onto the canvas. So to think that you can put, number one, we've got cameras out there that can get it exactly right. And number two, I don't care about getting every little leaf on every little tree right. When I look at that tree, I see, when I'm looking at the tree, I see these beautiful nuanced fruit, these golden fruit. Oh, and this one even has some color notations in it, I see. Up towards the right-hand corner, there's one color notation. Anyway, I can't read what it says, but it'll be, but anyway, those, as I looked up, just like the leaves in those they're not leaves as such. They're put in there. There's a rhythm in the leaves of the tree. There's a rhythm of color, variation of color. There's a rhythm of value. There's a rhythm of placement, and there's a rhythm of drawing of how they're stretched out or squared up, or whether where they lead. Do they lead into the next? Where do they lead you around the canvas? Those gray areas, I'm surprised more people don't ask about those, but I just needed, maybe that was my answer to the white. I needed, because in between I would be looking, I'd see the branches, I'd see the fruit, I'd see those, but there's the whole beyond. Well, so if you're out, for some reason, when I was out there in the landscape, I'm always trying to find a little bit of blue sky here, or maybe a little bit of gray there. And you look down to the horizon and there's pollution, so it's getting all good. Those 5 or 6 gray shapes that are in the painting that are clearly not fruit or leaves or tree are an indication of the light and the tone in that area. And I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody. I'll have to listen to the recording of this and see how silly all this is sounding, but that's the best explanation I can give about the white of the canvas.
So lovely. Barry Hart, did I see that you had a question?
Um,
Hi, Barry.
yes, hi, Sam. Hello, everyone. Sam, I really, when you said that Leo never used the term vision, I said, how is that possible? I remember him talking about vision all the time, but I realized what you're saying. He was talking about sight and insight, your words,
Yeah.
and you know, that is vision. So
Yeah.
the term vision came from, for the school, came from Oscar Kokoschka. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oscar Kokoschka's school was called the School of Vision.
Okay. That's great.
Well, the first poster of this school was also a seminar in vision, Sam.
Right.
Yeah. No, exactly. That's. I mean, we actually traveled to talk to Kokoschka about what he felt about the school. We went and got Adrian Chapuis, who did the catalog of Cézanne drawings, and asked him about the school, and you know, it was a marriage of the teaching of the idea of the teaching of both Kokoschka and Leo, I would say.
I'm going to keep going through. Oh, Calvin Jones, it looks like you have a question. Go ahead, please. And make sure to unmute your screen if you could.
Hi, Calvin. Haven't seen you.
Hey, Sam. Yeah, it's been 40 years or so. I enjoyed your discussion of the white, and it reminded me of White and Leo's works. And it also, your remarks about painting and how the second stroke determined what the third one would be, and the third, the fourth, and so forth. And it reminded me of one thing about Leo. I remember watching him, and perhaps I'm wrong, you can correct me if I am, that his big oil paintings, which consisted of just a few lines, usually monochrome, and to an initial observer, they looked like they were just hurriedly thrown onto the canvas. And I was surprised when I saw him painting and very slowly putting those lines into place. And I was wondering, first of all, if that's right, and second, if that's the way you paint too, with, say, these leaves on the Reine Claude. Does that proceed slowly, or?
That's interesting. First of all, let me introduce you. That's Calvin Jones, who is, I believe, the oldest son of Jameson Jones, who was a good friend of mine. He was the dean of Southwestern University, and then he was the head of the Memphis Art Academy. He was on the board of the American Institute, the Institute for American Universities, and then came on board with our school. He was one of the board members of our school. And he was certainly a mentor to all of us, and a great correspondent with Leo, a great friend of Leo's, painter in his own right. Anyway, I think that tribute, because his father was a big deal in all of our lives. But the question, let me see if I can get back to the question, having said that now. But just real quick, run it past me, Calvin, if you can. Calvin?
I'm sorry, what?
Just give me a real quick.
Oh, I was just wondering about recalling the lack of speed or meticulousness with which Leo applied the paint, and wondering how that compared with how you did, say, on this Reine Claude or more recent things in terms of putting the paint onto canvas, and the care or the quickness or whatever. Not being a painter myself, it's hard to say, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, those large paintings of Leo's, and those large paintings were done actually by stippling with a little teeny brush, point by point by point by point by point.
Okay.
First, a lay-in was done. We usually would do the lay-in with Leo. He had a projector, an episcope. We would put a drawing in there and he would project. Now the drawings were done very quickly. These were drawings that were done in the caves of Bjorklund during the war, his religious drawings. But once, and then just the lightest of indications were put in on the canvas in the lay-in session with the episcope. And then that was it. We would do that at night, and he would close the studio down. He'd come back and start with. Then he had the drawing. He would sit on his high stool up there, and he would stipple. And very often you have a warmer tone lay-in underneath, and then some cooler tones coming over it. Because again, there's this constant thing that those of you that have studied with Leo, one thing always demands another. One stroke demands another. One color demands another. You know, in a sense, it goes back to jazz. And I think, or I saw that my good friend Francois is there somewhere. But I often think about an analogy to that is, if you ever listen to an improvisation, a concert of Keith Jarrett, you'd see he would lay down a note like that, just one note. And he would just listen to that note with no idea where he was going. Francois, raise your hand and correct me if I'm wrong. And then he would just improvise off that note. And it would take him for 15 minutes, maybe, wherever it took him, whatever was coming along inside him. That my process in these latest paintings, not this one, but the ones with the leaves, is not that, those are the watercolors, but more those, but no, more the ones, yeah, that are done from nature there. It's not, I'm a little puzzled on how to explain it, but each of these little areas here is an improvisation, and also it's an improvisation in the bigger sense that there are clusters, which is essentially the organization. There are through-going accents and lines that carry across that organize the painting, because you don't have your conventional horizon and foreground, middle ground, and background. But those are really, for me, the process of rendering. It's glimpse after glimpse. You look up and get a glimpse. You've already got your harmony in your head. Then you go to the palette, and even the palette is dictating the next stroke as much as what I've seen up there. I've seen what I've seen up there. I got a hold of it. I hope I got a hold of it. And I go on down and I start mixing the colors. And so much happens in the palette just because of, when you paint for a lot of years, ultimately seeing colors close to one another does something to you. And so very often things happen even on the palette that come up and change what happens up there. But it's just a matter of one note calling up the next note, one note in terms of value and in terms of color. And then there's some drawing, which is something new that I've never done, but I mean, there's some drawing coming back into it that just firms up certain things that need firming up, I guess, in which sense. I don't know if that's articulate, but that's the best I can come up with.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you do lithography at all anymore?
No, the presses I had when I moved out from France, I did bring one press to actually to Memphis, and kept it. I don't think I ever used it in Memphis. I also began to realize in the course of my life that it's pretty hard, certainly hard to do three things: to be a teacher, a painter, and a lithographer. But it's equally hard to be a lithographer and a painter in the real sense of the word, in the Leo sense of the word. Now, there were a lot of artists. That's what's unique about Leo's lithography, is he did it for himself. He worked for other people, but he was essentially producing his own work, and he could devote all his time to it. But lithography is an all-consuming art, and then even the way you see, because you tend to see in a different way that you draw for the lithography. So I didn't, number one, I never set up a press once I got to this country. That press, when I moved out of Memphis, I only was there for a couple of years, 4 years, I guess. We gave in the end to, I think, I think we gave to the Art Academy. I have no idea what became of it, but I think we gave to your dad's Art Academy.
Ann Whiteside, do you have a question? Go ahead and unmute yourself if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I do have a lithograph of your younger self. Can you see it?
Let me see. That would be up to Rose. Oh, let me see it. I can see that. Yeah. And by the way, hello.
I'll stop sharing my screen. I'll see if I can stop sharing my screen so we can see that a little bit bigger. How about that? Let's see.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
There it is.
It's got a lot of
Wow,
glare.
lovely.
It has some glare.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I
So
recognize
lovely.
Yourself from 1973.
73. There you are. Yeah. Well, there was trying to be the painter, the teacher, and the lithographer. But I was teaching lithography, so I had the press set up. And believe me, setting up a litho studio is a bit of a.
And you were hunting for truffles too.
Well, our side activities, we won't get into those because Truffles is the safest. We don't want to talk about too many of the side activities, but Truffles was one because, again, nature put me next not only to a great, to the man that was the president of the Truffle Society of the South of France, but also was a great mushroom authority and a beekeeper with 120 hives. So we were able to learn a little bit of all of that, which was beautiful. And I do remember somebody, I'm not sure who it was, but when we stayed out at my place after one of the summer schools, taking off to do a little running, a little footing, but she did it in her nightgown. And she went running up on the hill behind my house because there were like 60 some acres of just wilderness up there. It was a zone, classified zone. And she got lost in her nightgown up there running around. I don't remember who that was, but if anybody does, raise their hand.
Cam Doherty Killingsworth, do you have a question?
I just want to say that it's possible I've known Sam longer than anybody here today. Sam,
True.
I know. And we are cousins. Our grandparents were siblings. And this is so joyful to listen to this today and get this history. And I thank you for the invitation. Thanks.
No, I thank you for coming. And yeah, we were little kids. I can remember we would go off on some holiday to whatever it was. Your father's name was Cam. No, Cam.
Jim Doherty.
Jim and Dorothy Doherty.
And June.
And Rob and Cam were the, right, okay.
Yes.
Rob is your brother.
Yes, that's correct. He's in North Carolina. Yeah.
Well, how do you have that big old painting behind your head? Or is that, you know how to work a computer better than that?
Listen, when I saw that, I had to make a background for this call today. I really did.
Oh, well, that was a sweet idea.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Nice seeing you start.
You too.
Well, taking a look at the time, I think it might be good to wrap up here. I did record the call, so I'll make sure to send it out to everyone. So if you want to share it with your communities and your networks, that would be great. I'll also put it on our website. And I just want to say a big thank you for Sam Bjorklund for being our first artist of the month and for sharing your process and your history with us. We appreciate it so much, and we're so glad all of you could join us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just want to say, reiterate, thank you to everybody. And it's great seeing so many of these people again. And anybody want, I have great contact with a lot of the old students through email or through this, that, or the other thing. And I appreciate that contact. So anybody, I'm open to anybody that ever wants to chat about something. You can call me, you can email me, and as for all those references to my social media accounts, don't be too surprised when you get in there, because I lost one telephone and I had to buy a new one. Passwords got all screwed up. Everything's been hacked. And it looks to me like I've got about 5 accounts of everything, and I can't get into any of them, and all sorts of strange. So I don't know what you'll find. Above all, if you go to anything like Facebook or Instagram, which we post a lot of painting. So
Yes, and I just put the website up to Sam's page on our website. I just put that in the chat. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to our website and read Sam's full profile from our featured artist page. And it's almost October, so we're going to be having a new featured artist for October. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you, Sam.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rose, Sam.
Hi, everybody. Hello.
Thanks,
Hi,
Sam. Good to see you, buddy.
So
Great
good to
to
see
see
you.
Great to see so many.
Whiteside just dropped off Diane about 2 hours ago. She just spent 2 days over here with us, so that was good.
Wait, say that again.
No, I was shouting out to Ann Whiteside. Maybe she left already, but her friend came over here last week, and I just spent 2 days with her painting out in Bjorklund with her. So it was wonderful. I just wanted
And it
to.
looks like Diane's on the call too, Alan.
Oh, she is.
Hi,
Where's-
Diane.
Hi, Diane. Oh, there she is. Okay.
So great. Oh, so good to see all of you. Hi,
Oh,
Sophie.
Oh, God. Hi, Jill. Hi, everybody. My God.
Thank you.
Hi, Miranda.
Oh,
Hi, Ken.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Bye, Cole.
great. We'll keep doing this. No, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Who's next?
so
Who's
lovely.
next?
It's over.
Miranda Blas is next. You all get a preview. She's there
I'm
on the call. You
next.
can see her. Miranda's next for October.
Hi.
So
Oh,
keep
good.
your eye out.
Yeah,
We'll
keep
do
an
another
eye out
call.
for the date for that. It'll be really exciting. This has been so inspiring. Thank you so much.
Yes, next month is you, Miranda. Looking forward to it. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Good
night.
Pass it
Oh,
on.
I can't see Chip. Hi, Chip. All right. Oh, my God. Thank
Good
you,
to see
Sam.
Sam. See you, buddy.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Again,
We
thanks.
appreciate you.
Thanks, Sam and Alan.
So great.
Thank you,
seeing So
Sam.
many faces out of the past and so many people I've heard about but haven't gotten to know yet. So
Oh, it's so lovely. So good
I
to
know,
see
I still got a lot of questions, but I guess we gotta go.
you. You can stay on, Alan. I'll keep it on for
I'll
you.
stay on if anybody else has got any questions they want to ask. I mean, I don't have a hurry or program or anything.
Aw.
One big one I wanted to ask you, because your paintings reminded me of certain things. Because you didn't, how would you talk about you? Because when I was a student, you dragged me all over Italy and Paris to put me in front of the paintings in the museums. I was just wondering if you could talk about how that affected because you have such a knowledge of, the history of painting. Did that affect your painting, or did you sort of let that go, or how did that work?
No, the history of painting.
Not the history of painting, but I just mean, you've seen a lot of great masterpieces in the museums. I wonder if that affected.
I owe that to Leo. I mean, that's what he told us. Go to the museums, go to the museums. And I went to the museums, and there's one interesting little thing I think I can notice. I saw a painting of reproduction in a silly little book. Just a stupid little book like you buy at the grocery store when you're, and it was about art for children or something like this. And in it, I saw a reproduction of a painting by Paul Klee called The Sunset at Evening, or no, The Fire at Evening, or the Fire at Sunset, something like that. And I said, there's something in this, and it was a million miles from anything I would ever paint. There's something in this that really interests me. I got to see what it is. So this is the exact size of the original painting, 12 inches by 12 inches. And this is as exact a copy of that painting as I could make. And of course, one never being good enough, I made, oh no, it goes this way. I made another. So I've got this silly board here. My daughter sees it and she says, Daddy, do you think you could do me a big one of those, like about 5 feet by 5 feet? So I said, I don't think so, but I said, if I ever get an inclination, I'll give it a try. Well, way up there is a stack, and I did about 30 of them. And I must have spent 3 years doing them. I did about 20 5 by 5 feet, and then I realized they didn't fit anywhere in anybody's house or anything like that. So I came down to 3 feet by 3 feet, and every one, I mean, I never did Klee's colors again. I think one of the first things that came up, one day out in the front yard, I saw my kids, Santi, who was now 25 years old, was 5 years old at the time. He had a pair of old sweatpants and a sweatshirt that was laying in the front yard. I don't know why it was laying there, but kids' clothes get later on. And it was such a beautiful faded violet and a gray sweatshirt that I said, that's my harmony for the next one. So I began to realize that I could take these paintings, I could take this thing that I just held up, and I could come up with my own harmony. But what I needed to do was, there's a way that the painting works, and it's a very abstract painting. It's just blocks of color, but yet with a little imagination, you can see with that light that's at the very center of it and what have you, you can imagine the landscape. To me, the interest wasn't the landscape that was presented. The interest that was presented was the very strips like that. Sometimes the difference in value and tone was so fine and so important to make certain areas come out and other areas. And then I could begin, maybe in the next one, I could let something else come out of it and come up with a different harmony. I went to Costa Rica and spent a week with Billy down there, living in a tree house in the jungle. And I came back and did 2 or 3 with these beautiful green harmonies that are just the harmonies from this very mellow green from Costa Rica, and did the whole painting like that. So when I finished that series, that is what led into these trees that are, where leaves don't have to look like a bloody leaf. They can stand for a leaf if you want. And that the whole of the thing, to me, hopefully brings off, that's the sense that a man can have in front of this type of tree or in front of anything in terms of nature. I tend to take an idea and wander off and get lost out in the weeds. So if I've left you out in the weeds, I don't even know if it comes close to an answer, but anyway.
Well, they may not look like leaves, but they certainly act like leaves in your painting.
Yeah, well, exactly. That's what I want, is that they act. That's what Leo wanted. He said that the landscape is made up of, or a face is made up of certain things, certain principles. He says you've got to find them. He didn't say they are this. There are verticals, there are horizontals, contrasts, and bars. He said you've got to find them. So you go out, and God knows how many of us have stood out in the landscape. How many paintings have we flung paintbrushes right through, or have we stabbed or kicked or thrown on the ground and stomped on? I've done hundreds of them.
Way it goes.
Okay, Can't win them all.
So great.
That is the métier.
But anyway, no, where I was trying to go with that, and this, remember, I'm 50 years older than I was when you knew me, but I tend to get lost out there. But to bring that back, and I've already forgotten where I wanted to bring it back. So can't make that great observation there because I lost it up there.
It's all right.
One of these years, I'm going to catch up with all those thoughts that have gone up there. And I'll be brilliant. There'll be so many great thoughts left up there.
Put them on a
used to be able
blackboard, Sam.
Huh?
Put them on a blackboard like Billy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I'm more embarrassed by my thoughts than want to. There's nothing in them to be passed on, just to be laughed at.
That remains to be seen.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I gotta go. It's good to see you.
Say hello to your lovely wife.
I will, Sam. Thanks.
Bye.
I'm
Thank
going to
you.
go ahead and end. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end the call, but thank you so much. Thank you, Sam. We so appreciate you. And thank you all for sticking around and joining
Thank
us
you,
today. So
Sam.
good to see all of
Yeah.
you.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sam.
Inspiration.
Bye, Mary.
Thank you, Rose.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rose.
Ciao.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Anthony.